Welcome to myviolinrecital.com. This is Diane Allen, the website's creator. And today we have part 3 of our fingerboard geography series. Parts 1 and 2 I am not going to review. I'm just going to pick up right where we left off. So if none of this makes sense to you, you might want to go back and watch those 2 videos. What we're looking at is a page on a workbook that I made about 15 years ago. And what it does is it gives the student a chance to fill out where the notes are on the violin and to figure out what the notes are written here on the music staff. So I'm going to go through with you how I would work with students with this book. And this book is available for purchase, and you'll be able to find out how to buy that on my blog. And my experience has been that when students finish this book, they're pretty fearless. They can make their way all over the violin. It's pretty comprehensive. There's about 300 examples that the kids fill out. And the other thing I do is when I'm teaching Etude in Suzuki Book 1, and we start to learn C natural and G natural, that's pretty much when I start this whole conversation of where are all the notes on the violin in first position. And we'll start looking at those 2 worksheets that we saw in the other 2 videos. And then when they're finished with this workbook, I go right into third position. And I'll have them buy a third position book, and we're ready to move on out of first position and take on new frontiers. So here's an example in part 1. And all of part 1 is mastering whole steps and half steps. And what you start doing is you start with the key signature, and you'll have to learn how to read what the key signature is. We have F sharp and C sharp, and you fill that up. You'll fill that out up here on the line that says key signature. After that, you'll go through and write down the names of each of these notes on the staff. So we have A, B, C sharp, D, and E. The reason why C is sharp is because there was a C sharp in the key signature. When this is figured out, the next thing to do is to decide which A is this on the violin. Is that open A? Is it high A? Or is that low A down on the G string, which they might just be starting to learn at this point if they're playing Etude. So after it's determined that this is the A for the A string, you can then fill out the fingerboard. So open A would go up here in the box. B, A to B is a whole step. We're skipping over A sharp or B flat. And then after B is C natural, so we don't want that because we have C sharp in the key signature. So B to C sharp is a whole step. C sharp to D is our half step. We're skipping over this spot, which is D sharp or E flat. And then we have our E natural up here. So you can see that we have a half step between C sharp and D, and everything else in this particular example are whole steps. And this is where students learn how to make the half step sign in their music. You'll go over here and you'll make the half step sign from C sharp to D. If you remember what the worksheet looked like, it also had finger numbers out on the side here. There was a low spot and a high spot for each finger. So the first finger will take these 2 rows. The second finger takes these 2 rows. The third finger takes these 2 rows. And the fourth finger had a whole other thing going on there. But anyways, that's where students will look to figure out what finger numbers to put here. So we have 0 for the open string, first finger, second finger, third finger, and fourth finger. And then you can come over here and write in those finger numbers above the notes. At this point, all of the visual work in this workbook is complete, and I don't let students highlight this until I've checked it. But once I check it and I let them highlight it, they have a really good time because it just pops off the page and it just kind of glows and you can see the whole finger pattern going on there. So we've so far interpreted, okay, this is how we read the notes. This is how these particular notes are played on the violin. And now we need to tie in what does this sound like and what does it feel like to play. So yes, violin playing is a complicated thing. That's a lot of stuff to do. But, you know, we can all learn from this and develop our brains and be stronger for it all. Anyways, going on here, what we have to do next is play an A. Maybe you have a tuner that can play an A, or your violin's all tuned up, you can pluck the A string, or you have a piano, you can just get an A in your ear. And the first thing we're going to do is sing these, not play them. We're going to sing them because we want to create it in our imagination first. And I love looking here because you could see how far your voice has to go from A to B, B to C sharp, and half steps. When you sing half steps, you definitely have to do something different with your voice to sing those two notes so close together. And so a student will sing A, B, C sharp, D, and E. And as you notice, I'm not singing right now because my singing voice is just terrible. And you know, I'll sing for my students, and they get a big kick out of it because, you know, they all sing better than me anyways, and then they don't feel inhibited. So anyways, they sing A, B, C sharp, D, and E, and then they'll sing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they'll come over here and they'll look at the notes and they'll sing A, B, C sharp, D, E, and then they'll come over here and they'll sing the finger numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're tying together what we're looking at and how it sounds. Now the next step is all three. We need to look at this, have an idea of what it's going to sound like because we just sang it, and now you're going to actually feel it with your fingers as you play it. So you're going to, once again, it's fun to start here because it really tells your fingers where to go. So you start 0 and you play your violin, B, C sharp, D, and E, and then you'll go over here and you'll read the notes and you'll use your half step sign and remind those two fingers to go right next to each other. There's one more part to this stuff that you have to fill out in this book, and there's 8 parts to this book because we're going to examine all the different intervals all the way up to octaves in each part. So there's 3 questions, and they still deal with looking, sounding, and feeling. And so the questions are, what is the characteristic way that these notes fall on the music staff? So, for example, what does it look like to play whole steps and half steps when you're reading music? Well, it alternates, space, line, space, line, space, and they're all in a row. And that's the kind of thing you would write down. For example, if you were in this section called fifths, fifths are either a space to a space or a line to a line, skipping over one space. That would be a way, or skipping over one line. That would be a way to describe it. So you're actually having to describe what does it look like on the music staff. Then the next question is, what are the characteristic fingerings? And this has to do with what does it feel like to play. So you'll write 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 in this particular example with the half step in some places between fingers. And the last question is, what does it sound like? And this is where you can be creative. For example, chromatics might sound like a snake or like they're crawling. I want to thank you for visiting myviolinrecital.com. And once again, as always, happy practicing.